if you're feeling like, oh, I'm not going to do too good on this test, eventually, like, you're actually going to kind of speak that into existence. So it's almost kind of like the affirmation things. And then, like, your body's going to feel tense when you go into that classroom to take that test. And then ultimately, your behavior is going to follow your thoughts and then, like, your feelings, and you're going to fail that test.
What's up, guys? This is the Mentally Shredded Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whedon. Today's guest is Chrissy Kyles. How are you doing, Chrissy?
I'm doing fine. Kind of in the middle of wrapping up the semester, so I'm a little overwhelmed with assignments, but we're almost done.
Yes, there we go. So I'm glad you actually started there. We're going to dive right in because I'm excited to learn more about your field of study, what you're doing, and the plans for the future. So it is my understanding that you are going to school there in Oklahoma, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then let us know, what is your field of study?
Yeah, so I am in my second year of the counseling program at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater. So I'm wrapping up my clinical internship in May. So almost there. And then I will actually complete my degree in December of this year. So on the like downhill slope of things.
Yes, yes, you are coming around that corner now, and this is where the fun begins. You start looking for jobs. I'm sure you've already done your internships and things like that. Do you have any idea what next steps are as far as possibly working for a former intern, or is that still in the air?
Yeah, it's kind of still in the air. I have an idea of what I want to do though. So right now I'm doing my internship at a university counseling center, and I'm really enjoying it. And that's where I see myself after I graduate. So I want to stay here in Oklahoma. So it's kind of just a matter of what jobs will be open at a university counseling center whenever I graduate. So although I don't know what university or college I will be at, that's the ultimate like end goal of what I want to do, both short term and hopefully long term.
There we go. So let's dive into how we got here. I went to school for business. I figured, I grew up in a family, military family. My grandmother owned her own business, highly successful. And so that's what I saw. I saw my granddad, um, you know, take us on the military base after he retired. My whole life is pretty much like a second home for me. And so for me, I always just figured maybe I'll run a business one day, right? How did you decide? Yeah, I want to go the counseling route.
That's funny. I grew up in a military family, both my parents. So I don't know. It's kind of funny thinking about that. I was talking to somebody today and I was like, yeah, I'm like the first in my family to work in the field of mental health. My family tries to understand it, but they still support me. They just don't fully understand it. So I went to college to be a teacher, and I realized I liked my college experience. And it wasn't until I went through college that I realized, oh, there's other jobs you can do besides being a professor, because I thought that was it. So that's when I decided, maybe I can work with college students because I was going to do secondary ed. And so there's definitely some overlap between like high school juniors and seniors and then college freshmen and sophomore. So I knew I would like that age group. But how I looped into counseling was it was always something I had in the back of my mind. I initially thought maybe I could do school counseling when I was like in secondary ed, but I kind of let people talk me out of it. So when I told people that's what I wanted to do, they'd be like, oh, you just want to sit and listen to people's problems all day, or, it takes a lot of work to become a counselor. And so I kind of let that discourage me a little bit. And then fast forward to 2020, the pandemic, life slowed everybody down. And so I was like, this probably could be a good time to like follow up on that dream that I had a few years ago. And so I decided to apply for school and started my program in the summer of 2021. And now that I'm like almost done, I'm like, it still was a lot of work, like people said, but like either way, I would have had to have done it to become a counselor. And so I'm like, if I had just did that back then, like I probably would have like a few years under my belt and be done with all the like pre-licensing stuff. So basically it was something like I've always had in the back of my mind, but like didn't like go after it immediately. But I don't regret like going to school. It's just I wish I went a little bit earlier than what I did.
That's fair. That's fair. And when you're telling this story, I hear, the first thing that popped in my mind was I shared my vision. I shared like what I want to do with those around me, those closest to me, and they kind of shot it down, right? And isn't that just so familiar, right? I know for people listening who has had these big dreams. I had these big dreams of playing professional soccer, and you can only imagine the negative feedback that I received. And now running a business, you're used to it. You get used to people not supporting you. But I will say, when you make it, they're always the ones that will say, "Oh, I knew you could do it," right? And so I love that you shared that. And you said, regardless of what they have to say about this isn't their life, right? I feel called to do this. I'm going to pursue this regardless. And COVID kind of set you up for that, right? It's, mental health is becoming such a mainstream topic. And well, it is a mainstream topic because I believe due to COVID,
Mhm.
when we were locked down and we couldn't go anywhere. And then now we're looking at suicide rates going up. We're looking at mental health, anxiety, depression, things like that, diagnoses going up. And so I love the fact that you chose to stick to your guns. And I love the fact that you are going into this space because I I know that we need more representation as far as people of color in these spaces. Is that something, since you're in school, is that something that you're seeing even in your university, where it's like maybe I'm one of the few, or are you seeing a lot more people saying, yeah, I think I want to go this route?
Yeah, so in my program, it's definitely there could be more diversity in my cohort. It's definitely predominantly white female in my cohort, and that mirrors the field. But I think like yes, we do need more counselors of color, but like I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are a lot of like steps you have to take to become a counselor, and I think a lot of those like those are barriers, especially for people of color, to enter the field, and so I think sometimes it is sometimes unnecessary steps in order to become a counselor, but, like, you just gotta get through it. I think, like, whenever I first interviewed for my program, I think there was, like, 4 they said 4% of the mental health professional field, whether it's counselors, social workers, psychologists, all of the things, only 4% are Black. And so I was like, "Oh my gosh." I thought the field was, like, a lot bigger than that, but as far as people
Right.
of color, but I was like, 4%. Like, that felt like a huge, like, almost like a burden on my shoulder, and I felt heavy
Mhm.
because I'm like, I know I'm not responsible to care for all people of color, but, like, in that moment, I almost felt like it. So yes, we do need more BIPOC individuals. We also need more males, in the field. I find that, the field of counseling is pretty, woman-dominated, and so I've even seen in my internship where clients were like, "I wish y'all had male counselors at the site," and we just don't. So we just need diversity, like, all around.
Yeah.
But that is partially what influenced me to enter the field of counseling, though.
Yeah. I love that it didn't deter you though, that 4%, right? When you said that, my mind immediately went to Chrissy is leading the charge for her generation in this space, right? Like you are a part of that 4%. And so when we look to the future, and that's at 20% or 30%, whatever that looks like in the future, you were a part of that charge. And then those that came before you were a part of that 1%, that 2%. So um, that's how, just kind of reframing it instead of it being daunting, like, oh man, like I feel this pressure. It's like, no, oh man, like I'm here and I'm encouraging others to also follow my lead, right? Like I did the right things to be here, and I'm going to make sure that I show up as authentically and as my true self to help open doors for others.
Yeah, for sure. Ironically, I know I threw out the stat about like we need more men, but like it's actually surprisingly, I lead a men's wellness group at my site, and I was nervous at first because I was like, well, I'm not a male. So I was like, what are they going to learn from me? But like looking as I look back over the semester, that's been like part of the most fun part of my internship, is just seeing the men that show up because I think men are actually starting to be ready to openly have conversations about mental health and learn how to be more vulnerable. But again, like I said, we do need more men therapists. I think for them to feel more comfortable going to therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love this space. I never thought I would be, an advocate for mental health. I never thought I'd be sharing my story and running a foundation to change the stigma, right? Like this was not a part of the plan. I was not thinking about any of this. But it's funny, this is where we're at, right? You said something earlier that it is a lot of work to get to where you are now. Graduation's on the horizon, and I often tell people you're either going to suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, right? And so now, like, yes, you suffered to get to where you are, but that discipline is going to allow you to be in the space that you dreamed of being in, right?
Mhm.
So take a moment when you walk across that stage to like truly pat yourself on the back and truly take it all in, because no one else did that work, right? Like you woke up every day, you went to class, you did what you needed to do, you went to your internship, right? They don't just hand out degrees for counseling or degrees in the mental health space. Honestly, I'm glad because we need a lot of help, right? So yes, kudos to you. I just want to give you flowers.
Well, thank you for that. I'm definitely patting myself now because, like I said, I finished this internship in 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and I'm like, how did I do this whole year? Because I still worked as well. And so like I was taking 9 credit hours working and then going to my internship site. And I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but like we're here, we're almost done. And so I'm like, I'm proud of myself.
Looking for a consulting firm that can help your organization achieve its full potential? Look no further than Deck Leadership. With over 25 years of experience in NASCAR, founders Mike Metcalf and Sean Pete know what it takes to lead high-performing teams. They can help you uncover opportunities for diversity, efficiency, culture, and kindness, all while inspiring human brilliance. And if they can lead pit crews that can change 4 tires and fill 18 gallons of gas in less than 12 seconds, just imagine what they can do for your organization. Visit www.deckleadership.com for more information. Yes, yes. I love that. I love that. So let's jump into the future, right? So you have your degree, maybe you decide, hey, I want to go back to school or whatever. What does Chrissy want to be remembered for, you know, 30 years from now, right? Because 30 years from now, I assume you'll be in your 50s, 40s. So, how do you want to be remembered at that time?
Yeah, I hope like the work that I do with clients, even if they don't remember everything that we talk about in therapy, I hope they have that voice in their head like, okay, my counselor taught me this skill, I'm able to implement it and like be able to take ownership, because I think most people think like, oh, you want to stay with your counselor your whole life. Like that's not our goal. Our goal as counselors is to work our clients out into where they're able to cope with life on their own. And for some people, it might take longer than others. But my hope is that clients can take like at least one thing from our like counselor and client relationship and be able to implement it to just improve their own like well-being and take ownership of their own mental health.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I'm not certified in the mental health space by any means. When I go talk to businesses, when I do events, I just share my story, right? I'm a person with lived experience, and I'm on the board of NAMI Charlotte. So I share my lived experience with people, and I tell people what worked for me. One of those things being affirmations. I'm a huge proponent of affirmations, and it could be the fact that my parents spoke a lot of positivity over myself and over my brother our whole upbringing. So it just kind of came natural. And I would write when I moved here, I moved to Charlotte in 2016. 2017, starting in 2017, I wrote 9 affirmations every single day for 3 years straight. And it was the same ones, right? To this day, I still write affirmations. Now, I've changed as far as like I write a lot more affirmations, but those 9 are programmed in here. So when I go speak, I can tell people right off the bat what those are I programmed my mind to be able to walk in that space and to truly believe that this is who I am, right? Whether I
Mhm.
see it right now or not, that doesn't matter. But we have to put ourselves in that space. Eventually, you write it enough and you start speaking it enough, you're going to believe it. I want to know your thoughts on affirmations because I've spoken to people in the mental health field, and some of them do not believe in the power of affirmations. So I always like to just find out, what are people's thoughts?
Yeah, that's funny because I was just thinking like I like to do like a 30-day affirmation like challenge for myself. So like my February one was like I deserve to rest and like cuz I was definitely like in this mode where I'm like I just got to like keep checking things off the to-do list. And then like it almost like I felt like I had to like earn my rest. And it's like no, that's like not okay because like you should rest like it's a basic human need. You don't have to earn it. So anyways, I felt like by the end of the 30 days when I had that as my affirmation, I really did start to feel like okay, if my body's not feeling it, then like I'll push this to-do list to the side and take care of my needs first and then go back to what I need to go back to. And I did feel like by those 30 days, I felt like, okay, like I'm not a machine. I can't be on 24/7. So like I do truly feel like I deserve rest. So like back to what you were saying is like it almost like even if you don't feel it right now in the moment, like I think eventually you kind of speak it into existence. So like that's my thoughts on affirmations, but I mean I
Yeah.
know everyone has opinions on them, but I do think that they're helpful though.
Yeah, yeah. What are some practices that you kind of go through with your current clients? Still, being in school and soon doing this full time, right? What are some like best practices that you could share with us?
Yeah, so one that came to mind, I don't know if you're familiar with the cognitive triangle. It's more of dealing with unhelpful thoughts. So basically are in using cognitive behavioral therapy, it's talking about how our thoughts and our feelings and behaviors all like the relationship all affect each other. And so like if you're feeling like, "Oh, I'm not going to do too good on this test," eventually like you're actually going to kind of speak that into existence. So it's almost kind of like the affirmation things. And then like your body's going to feel tense when you go into that classroom to take that test. And then ultimately your behavior is going to follow your thoughts and then like your feelings and you're going to fail that test. So I talk a lot about the relationship between our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Another thing I like to talk about is called the power of and. So, like, oftentimes a lot of people use like black and white thinking. So it either has to be this or that, for example, or like you're either good or bad. But there's a lot of like areas of gray in the world today. So, like, I try to like help clients reframe okay, two things can be true at once. Maybe you didn't do too good on this test today, but that doesn't mean you're a bad like student. It just means like I did bad on this test and now I know I need to study better for the next one. So like those
Hmm.
are two things I think I use often in my work.
Yes, yes. I had someone tell me last year, Chris, when you're speaking, you say but a lot. Try saying and. Just like challenge yourself to say and then see what happens. And I was on stage speaking probably a few months after that. And I was speaking and I said but, and then I go, and everyone started laughing because they knew exactly what I was going through mentally at the time. And I said, yeah, I had to reframe I had to reframe that. But I do think it is. See, I reframed it there. Um, I do think it's important to reframe just because our words have power, right? And
Mhm.
so we speak life or death, and that is the power of our speech, of language, of our mouths, right? Like we can literally speak life into ourselves or to someone else. Think about how amazing that is.
Yeah.
But with the same tongue, we can speak death. We can speak and spew hate and hurt and all of these things and really cut people, right? And that is the issue that we are seeing today. I do not believe that our world is suffering because we're speaking love and speaking peace over people, right?
Right.
People are dealing with things in their own way, which sometimes reverts to extreme measures. And so, as I speak, as I connect with others, as I continue to be an advocate in this space, my mission, my goal is to speak life into people. I do not care if they speak life back into me. That is not my goal. My goal is to speak life into them regardless because I know the effect that it will have on me by doing that. Me speaking life into you only pours back into me. If I speak death into someone, that now takes out of my cup. And now I have to run around, scramble to try to figure out why is my life falling apart. And I'm a huge believer in just the power of the tongue. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think there's power of the tongue, and then, like, recently, I've been thinking about just the power of writing things down too as well. I think I might just go back into the affirmations thing. So like, yes, I do believe, because I like a lot of the work I do is listening and also like talking back to clients. So like, I definitely believe in the power of both listening and like not just listening to hear somebody, but like active listening and making sure that they feel heard and understood and speaking life into them, but also, like, I think there's power in writing things down too. It's really interesting to go back and look at things you write about yourself in the past and be like, "Oh," like, I don't even use the word manifest, but, like, Imma use it in this sense, like, I'm just like, "Oh," like, I kinda manifested that for myself, like, a couple years ago. So, like, I believe there's power of the tongue and, like, power of, written word.
Yes, yes. As we get close to wrapping up here, you mentioned the power of listening. And we have to touch on this because there's a lot of people that, we're not mental health professionals, right? We call our friends, we vent, we do, and or when people reach out because they actually need help, right?
Mhm.
How can we practice active listening and make sure that we are asking the right questions?
Yeah, one way you can do that is by reflecting. So I know a lot of times I'm guilty of this too when I'm not paying attention to like a loved one and they're like, "Are you listening?" And I just say the last thing they said, which I mean, technically that's listening, but I probably didn't even hear everything else before that, right?
I'm
So,
guilty of
um,
that as well.
so reflecting is kind of like summarizing what that person said in your own words. Um, Number one, that can also like if you reflect back to them what they said, they can correct you and be like, "No, actually, I meant this." But if you were pretty much spot on, then they feel like, "Oh, like this person understood me." So I think reflecting back what people say. I think you brought up a good point when you talked about venting. Sometimes asking people, because sometimes people just want to vent and don't necessarily want advice. So just being like, are you just wanting me to listen and you want to vent to me, or do you want advice? And like that way you don't offer unwarranted advice that they really didn't want because they just really needed to like have a listening ear. So like asking like, is this for venting or is this conversation like you truly do want some advice? If it's in a situation where someone like truly does need help and it's like, ooh, this is probably a crisis actually, always like if you can refer out, if you have a mental health professional nearby, if not, the 988 hotline, you can actually call or text it and it will route you to the closest like emergency professional that is near you so that that person can be either checked on by local law enforcement or ambulance. So that's always a thing to keep in your back pocket, I think, just in case you ever need it. So 988 is the national crisis and suicide hotline.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that, because I know that 988 is growing as far as awareness, but I think there's still a lot of people that don't know about the resource, and so I'm thank you for sharing that resource.
Yeah, yeah. I know the number just changed, I think it was last year because that used to be like a 1-800 number, but now it's 988 no
Mhm.
matter what state you live in.
Yep, yep. I think that was a great power move, and apparently people have been using it a lot. So that's what we want. That's what it's there for, and it is free, right? It's a free resource for us to be able to use when we are in crisis, or if we have a loved one in crisis. So definitely use that resource. Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to see your career flourish. I'm excited to see where you end up in the future, and the lives that you impact. And so, where can we find you on social media? And then I have a question for you here at the end, as soon as you let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, so Instagram and LinkedIn are where I'm at the most. My Instagram is at Bliss with Chris, and it's Chris Chriss, so Chris with two S's. My LinkedIn is actually my name, Christiana Kyles, and then I also have a website. It's blisswithchris.com.
I love it. I love it. I love Bliss with Chris. That's awesome. I mean, not because my name is Chris, but maybe. No, that's amazing. Guys, definitely follow her on her journey, support her. If you have any questions, I'm sure Chris will be able to answer those for you as well. And this is just a community growing together, and so I'm honored to have had you on. Thank you again for joining us. I like to end with an affirmation. So, essentially, what I will say is I'll say "I am," and I just want you to finish that sentence. Okay, pretty
Okay.
straightforward. Cool.
Yes.
All right. I am.
Capable.
Mm, yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're going to do great things, Chrissy. Thank you again for tuning in and joining us. Guys, if you were able to take anything from this episode, our ask is that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and that you please share. We want to thank our subscribers. We want to thank our current sponsors. And if you would like to also be a sponsor to help us accomplish our mission in changing the stigma in mental health, then please reach out. You can find us at www.mentallyshreddedfoundation.com or www.christopherdwhedon.com. We are also on Instagram at Mentally Shredded Podcast. So thank you again for tuning in. As always, love y'all. Peace.